football feast.
Shall we begin?
9 to noon. And he's P.A. Hardcore football.
Football feast.
Yes, it's a beautiful morning in Eagan, Minnesota at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Good morning. This is the 9 to noon radio presentation. Your buddy Paul Allen at the Minnesota Vikings practice facility, known as TCO PC, Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Nordo, the producer, is at the 651 Carpets Plus Studios. And today is day one of minicamp for the Minnesota Vikings, and Justin Jefferson very much is in town. It'll be fun to watch Justin run around in practice today and see after the practice, hopefully 9 to noon can run him down to see what he thinks of catching passes from Sam Darnold, maybe catching some passes from young J.J. McCarthy. But there are 3 days of minicamp this year, and 9 to noon will be here today and tomorrow. Coming up on the radio show today, Ben Gessling, who covers the team expertly for the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com. Some interesting things have emerged with Ben's coverage of the team of late that we believe you will enjoy. And when minicamp begins at about noon, maybe 12:05, right after 9 to noon, it's going to be very interesting to see how things set up into this fine 2024 season. Now, this would personify setting things up for 2024 with the right to change myriad opinions late July, early August, mid-August, after a joint practice and some preseason games, and then into the season opener the week after Labor Day against the New York Giants. But so how is this thing going to set up for 2024? Tentatively, as of now, offensive line, left to right, Christian Darrisaw, Blake Brandell, Gary Bradbury, Ed Ingram, and Brian O'Neill. Quarterback, Sam Darnold. Running backs, as you go 1-2 with the fullback, Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, and the venerable C.J. Ham. Wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. Then it starts to get a little sneaky. Then it starts to get a little goofy with K.J. Osborne now running for the red, white, and blue of football immortality, the New England Patriots. Some of the constituents here that intrigue me include, well, Brandon Powell was on the team last year. Thayer Thomas was on the practice squad last year. Jalen Naylor was hurt last year, but then joined festivities. And one of the newbies here is Trent Sherfield Jr. All right. Now Trent, he played for the San Francisco 49ers at one point of his career. And when I went looking a little more deeply into Sherfield Jr., the first thing that jumps out to me, 6'1", 206. All right. Just keep that in mind. Trent Sherfield Jr., 6'1", 206. Then as tight ends go, T.J. Hawkinson eventually. I honestly no idea if he's gonna start the first game of the season or be available anytime the first month of the season. So let's move forward sans Hawk for now, and the top two tight ends, top three would be Bobby Tunyon, Josh Oliver, and Johnny Munt. So Tunyon, Oliver, and Munt, and some of the offensive wild cards would include at this stage of the equation. Now, minicamp is different from organized team activities in that you start to unveil some some position flexibility and some depth related issues where, maybe today on Tuesday, you see Blake Brandell get 80% of the left guard snaps and Ed Ingram get 75% of the right guard snaps. But that makes Dalton Reisner a wild card in the equation. Now, they got a cat here named Henry Bird. They got another guy named Dan Feeney, Juergens, who was drafted. My belief is they like him more as a center than a guard, but nevertheless, he would be in the mix there. So all of that starts to unfurl today. I've always enjoyed minicamp because minicamp in mandatory fashion, that's when like Justin Jefferson signing right before minicamp doesn't mean that he wouldn't have showed up for minicamp. Last year, he didn't show up for a majority, if not all, of the organized team activities, but was here for mandatory minicamp. So the wide receiver shuffle, N'Keal Harry, 6'4", 225, keep that in mind. That's another little bit of a wild card for me. And as the days navigate, I'll get into exactly why receivers like Sherfield Jr. and N'Keal Harry are wild cards within this mix. And it has more to do than KJ Osborne bolting via free agency to the New England Patriots. It mostly has to do with some things in the Minnesota Vikings running game that I believe are going to be different than we've seen through the first 2 years of Kevin O'Connell's regime. Now, defensively speaking, the defensive line, that's perplexing to me because you can set up in a standard 3-4 where you'll have 3 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, and then 5 defensive backs. But Flores does things in such quirky fashion and changes players' positions during the course of games. So like Josh Metellus is a safety, but at certain times of games, he would play inside linebacker, outside linebacker, nickel corner, or just be that roamer in the hybrid 3-4 with roamers, the hybrid 3-4 with those floaters that this time of the year last year I started hearing about. And it turns out Metellus was the floater of all floaters ever to float. Now, Cam Bynum can do that too, but there are some intriguing things with the defense. And first and foremost, like on the defensive line, Harrison Phillips is a cinch. Now, he's not a cinch to play every game because big guys get tired. But Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, who, as crazy as it sounds, like in January when 9 to Noon was discussing free agency and the draft and everything, I was like, man, yeah, I really hope they re-sign Jonathan Bullard because A, it ain't going to cost that much. B, he's one of the strongest guys on the team. And C, unlike some others, mostly who were here last year, but like with Jerry Tillery and some others, Jaquelin Roy in his second year, holding the point on the defensive line is super important. And being able to just hold your guy in his spot so other guys can play games. And Flores' defense is not only full of chicanery and skullduggery and trickery, but they play a lot of games where, you'll have one guy in one position and you're like, all right, well, my man's going to be a linebacker there. Well, actually, he's the floater in the hybrid 3-4 with the floaters, and he'll drop back even though you had seen 10, 15, 20 times on tape. That same player from that same spot rushes 75, 80% of the time. So Flores does a lot of that. I'm really excited to see today and over the next couple of days how the wheel turns with these defensive players, because Phillips is a cinch to play the most of all defensive linemen. So after that, I think Jonathan Bullard would probably be the second choice to play the most at this stage. Now, from a pass rushing standpoint, this is not 5 sacks or more, but he may be the best run stopper on the team, certainly on the defensive line. Harrison Phillips is pretty good at it too. Jerry Tillery has opened eyes during organized team activities. Now, most of the organized team activities, OTAs, they operate and maneuver without helmets. So it actually, in the world of football, is like big when they put on helmets. A, because people are like, it looks like football, but B, they just start to get the whole armor of the game and maneuver with it, and it just looks more like football. And so really up to that point, which was last week, I came out a couple of times last week and during the vocal maintenance days, and I've heard some good things about Jerry Tillery, who was a former first-round pick, and he played against the Vikings last year when he played for the Las Vegas Raiders and actually had one of his better games of the season. So that could be a friendly fire situation where, you leave a game and you have the constituents who either coach offensive line or the general manager or the personnel people, and they look back at the games and, while they're watching their team, they're kind of like, damn, man, who was that? Damn, look at that. Hey, look at that drop. Hey, doubled him here and he got through it. So there are myriad reasons Tillery is on the team. I do look at him as a wild card. I wouldn't make him a cinch to make the team, but I would make him at this stage of the equation. Again, it's minicamp and we got 3 of these. I'd make it 65, 70% or higher that Tillery makes the team and could be part of the rotation. We'll start learning that today. Jaquelin Roy. When I first saw Jaquelin Roy a few weeks ago, it's one of the fun, fascinating parts of the job for me is when they leave, like generally speaking in January, and then you see them in, say, May. Well, the 20, 21, 22-year-olds, when they grow over the course of a year, and, they get some foundational cash behind them. So that means, when they're away, it's not just push-ups and sit-ups and pull-ups and stuff like that. They work with trainers. And I'm not exactly sure if Jaquelin Roy has done that, but he just looks different. It just looks like he crafted his body a different way, lost some of that metaphorical baby fat. And I think, I sense Jaquelin, who was drafted 2 drafts ago, I sense he feels there's gold in them are hills that he recognizes with the depth or maybe even lack thereof until people start showing what they can do with like joint practices and preseason games and stuff like that. I think Jaquelin Roy senses he could play a fair amount this year if the proverbial P's and Q's are followed and he does it right. As of now, he would be Harrison Phillips' backup, but those are the 4 most prominent for me at this stage of the equation when it comes to the defensive line. But when it comes to Flores' defense, I can't come into it and we can't come into it thinking that you're going to have 3 defensive linemen a majority of the time with the 3, 4, and the 5 DBs because Brian just doesn't do it that way. He does it that way sometimes. But then I'm excited for Gessling to join here at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Alec Lewis will join tomorrow, and I'll probably go through some of the same stuff with him because 9 to noon will be back here tomorrow. But from a linebacker standpoint, the edge rushers they're outside linebackers, so they fit into the linebacker mold, even though there are separate coaches for outside linebackers and inside linebackers. For instance, Mike Saravo is the inside linebackers coach, did wonderful work with Ivan Pace Jr. last year. If you talk to Ivan about Saravo, he speaks very glowingly of him. And at this time last year, the outside linebackers coach was Mike Smith. Then he left the team right before the first game of the season. And our Pettin report, the Pettin piece, the Vikings update bit that we do during the course of the season, Mike Pettin, he not only was assisting with the defense and the offense as associate head coach, but then he became outside linebackers coach. And now that is his title this year, along with associate head coach. And why I bring that up with the first of 3 minicamp days on the horizon. Now, Andrew Van Ginkel is recovering from an injury. So he's out of the mix for now, But in September, he won't be out of the mix. He'll be in the mix. And what's intriguing is, generally speaking, they use 4 linebackers. But if they use 3, you have Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman, Ivan Pace Jr., and Dallas Turner. So those 5 right there that's the handful that comes to mind first. And, after that, some of the wild cards that I mentioned, like outside linebacker Owen Porter from Marshall. I got some steam on him last week, and then I'm watching 57 run around. I'm like, damn, who knew? I mean, he doesn't look like the biggest thing in the world, 2 fields away, but then when you see him, he's thick and he's super fast. It's just very tenacious, just very fast. Owen Porter. So that's a flyer name as now goes. Kind of like undrafted Arkansas corner Dwight McLaughlin, I think is how you say his last name. But from the secondary standpoint, Shaq Griffin along with Byron Murphy Jr., they'll play all the plays. So they'll play a majority, if not all the plays, depending on if Flores rotates corners more than he did last year. But after that, Caleb Evans, at least some of the times that I've watched, Caleb Evans was getting the majority of the reps over the likes of Mekhi Blackman. Jay Ward is a safety, but he's a hybrid. He's part of that floater bit where, he can play some inside corner like Josh Metellus does. But with Griffin, Murphy, Evans, Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, Cam Bynum, then Jay Ward's a wild card. Mekhi Blackman's a wild card for what feels like the 15th consecutive season. I can't figure out what to think about Andrew Booth Jr. I mean, just sometimes you watch him run around and you're like, damn, man. I mean, I see it. I mean, he has some fantastic to his game, but it has not translated to regular season performances. And with Andrew, looking at it like, well, there have been a lot of injuries in the equation. I understand that. But a fair amount of those injuries are now getting in the rearview mirror. And, like last year with rookie Mekhi Blackman, Caleb Evans in his second year last year, and just what they offered from a corner standpoint, yeah, I felt like with Tillery Doc and the defensive line. When we talk about him or Jaquelin Roy, those are 2 guys who recognize there's a lot of playing time to be had here, man. And that was the situation with the Vikings secondary and with their corners last year. Yet Booth Jr. just did not take that proverbial bull by the horns. So he's another year into it. He's out there a fair amount at organized team activities, mostly with the 2s from what I've seen. But I'm sure he runs with the 1s occasionally because they mix it up so much. But he's definitely a wild card in this, and so is Kyrie Jackson. I've mentioned it before that when they drafted him, and I just simply looked at his size. The first comparison for me was your guy in Seattle, Reek Woolen. It was Tariq, but now he's the artist formerly known as Tariq, and he prefers to be called Reek Woolen with a little apostrophe in front of that R. It's not a tilde, it's an apostrophe. Reek Woolen. Now, Reek or Tariq is thick. He's thicker than Kyrie Jackson, but they look very similar, height-wise, arms that are super long, and for Kyrie, this is like an opportunity for him to recognize he was drafted. He was drafted relatively high as the picks go. Granted, it's a Saturday pick, but nevertheless, it's a pick that was not like deep in the 6th or 7th round or undrafted cat or something. And, it's if a Caleb Evans, I mean, with all due respect, personally speaking, if a leap is not taken with his ball catching skills and some other awareness related items, well, I mean, that's a spot that can be had. So with Shaq Griffin and Byron Murphy Jr., they're going to play all, if not a majority of the reps. Metellus has shown that in certain down and distance situations, and given personnel, specifically if a team uses 2 tight ends and has a tailback, that's when you see Metellus playing closer to the line of scrimmage. And, in essence, that's the beauty of what Brian Flores does, because that position that Josh plays really does not have a designation on certain downs and distances and with certain personnel groupings coming from the adversary. So you can look at it and be like, all right, he's an outside linebacker. Well, actually, he's an inside corner. Or actually, he's not an outside linebacker or an inside corner. He's going to drop into a zone and be a third safety. So those are some beautiful things once all of the players understand it. Once they understand it, the unpredictability of who's coming from where or who's going where, that should be dramatically stronger for at least a handful of players on this team. Like, Harrison Phillips as a nose tackle, you're not going to see Harrison feign a rush and then drop back into center field and pass coverage. So whatever's required of him in the Flores defense, it's not as exotic as it is for some other players. But nevertheless, with the calls, and that's another interesting facet as we approach training camp, preseason games and the regular season, is who's going to call the defense? I mean, Jordan Hicks called it last year. Now he's in Cleveland. I'd make Blake Cashman favored. Blake had a moment last year where somebody got hurt. Somebody got hurt, and Blake had to move to inside linebacker. And at least for one game, maybe 2, he called the defense. He was green dot guy for the Houston Texans. And in one of those games, man, he had 18 tackles, maybe 15 to 18 tackles. So if only for a super small sample size, Blake has done it, and Blake responded well with it, granted with completely different players. But from a Caleb Evans standpoint, and just the way 2024 is shaping up defensively, it's like the ones who should not be caught off guard with what's coming at them with Brian Flores' quirky defense, with the 3-4, the hybrid 3-4 with the floaters. Harrison Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, Ivan Pace Jr., Patrick Jones, if he makes it, Byron Murphy Jr., Caleb Evans, Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, Cam Bynum, Jay Ward, Mekhi Blackman. That group right there should be squared away more so than at the beginning of the season last year. And that has to be the case, because offensively, last year, the Minnesota Vikings offense would hit some lulls, like most, if not all, offenses and or defenses do. But it's so different this year in that with Sam Darnold, the predicted starting quarterback week 1, Aaron Jones, the predicted starting tailback, you have a new pitcher, battery mate the same in Garrett Bradbury, but you're working the play action off a different guy. And even though it's still play action, and Aaron has some Dalvin high end to him, or Dalvin Cook had some high end Aaron Jones to him, it's still different with what you can do with Jones compared to some other backs that you've had here. Now, Hawkinson, TJ has a lot of nookie blanky to him for a quarterback, in that if things get muddled, you can throw it in certain areas to TJ and get yourself out of trouble, even if it's a 4 or 5 yard gain. But, all indications are that I don't believe they'll begin the season with TJ Hawkinson as an active player, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I read something within the last month where that seemed to be the favored scenario. So the point being here with Robert Tonyan as a tight end who's going to play, he'll play a fair amount. Josh Oliver will probably play most of all of them. And Ty Chandler, I don't exactly know how they're going to use Ty or CJ Ham, but Aaron Jones, he's run behind a fullback before, but the way they executed offense in Green Bay is they will use an H-back like Josiah DeGuara. They'll use players like that, who are more angular and taller, than like CJ. I mean, CJ Ham's the battering ram. So you get CJ out in space with Aaron Jones, Showtime behind him, and maybe that can be a change to the running game that we've seen, but maybe it didn't work as well with, say, Madison as potentially it can with Aaron Jones. So as the defense, the defense is such a big key to this equation because the first 3 games last year, you got Mike Evans running all over the field and they can't find him. And then the next week, they had, on Thursday Night Football, they had Jalen Hurts so fooled for a couple of possessions that, like, he was hoisting the white flag on plays. I mean, on the Eagles' first possession, this is Jalen Hurts we're talking about here, all right? On the Eagles' first possession last year, Jalen Hurts had seen something on tape where he would have bet every dollar he had a player was coming at him from his backside, so from his left arm. And he took the snap, stepped out once to the left, and then kind of bent over like he was going to elude a sack or he was going to try to sneak away from something. But there was nobody there. And then he got up and he threw the ball away. So it was an incomplete pass. He picked himself up and threw it away. So there's that with the Flores defense. But after that, Jalen Hurts is so smart and so gifted, and the Eagles' offensive staff is so good at times that they figured it out. And then now all of a sudden, they're moving their chess pieces, and then Flores has to move his, where you had a fair amount of people on the defense still trying to figure the defense out. Harrison Smith and Jordan Hicks, pretty much the first day Flores got here, I think they understood the defense, but that wasn't the case for everybody. So there goes Devontae Smith on a busted coverage for like 61 or 65 or something like that. And in that game, when the Eagles had to make a play, there were guys that were just too far wide open because there were certain players not playing fast. Then week 3, that's a game you should have won. Caleb Evans needs to catch an interception that bounced into the arms of Joshua Palmer. And, it's a 30-70 ball, 30 meaning it should be caught. But, Hawkinson had a chance at the end of the game on the goal stripe to win the game. But he couldn't haul it in. He couldn't bring it in. It was a tough catch, and he didn't catch it. But during that game, Keenan Allen has got a little HOF to him. My man goes for a career high, like 256 or something like that. And he got us on a gotcha, where he threw a pass to Mike Williams, and he was wide open. So from that time on, after those 3 games where it was abundantly clear that things were getting better, but not exactly clicking with all members of the defense, it changed games 4 pretty much to near the end of the season when everybody got tired. So that's why when I say from Phillips through Hitman and Bynum and Metellus and Jay Ward and Blackman and things like that, it's while the offense with a new quarterback, a new running back, a new tight end, and a new third receiver and a new left guard, maybe a new right guard, who knows, as that, if that comes out of the gate going for 425 and 4 touchdowns, that'd be great. But I think there's going to be some work in progress to it as they all acclimate at the highest speed, at the highest level in a non-training camp situation, which means the defense, specifically those who have been here and know the calls or know the expectations from Flores, they're going to need to come out of the gate firing, and it's going to need to complement each other better early than it did last year. And then you get to the Alabama kicker, Will Reichert. Good punting battle here, too, by the way, between Ryan Wright and Seth Vernon. That will bear its fruit the next 3 days. The long snapper is Andrew DePaula. The punt returner is Brandon Powell. And the kick returner is Kene Wanwu. And later in the show, I'm going to talk about the mystifying nature of these kick returns. But I think a lot of teams are going to use 2 guys back as kick returners with this new kick return bid. But we'll share more on that later. But today is day 1 of Minnesota Vikings minicamp. And they have 3 of them today, Wednesday and Thursday. And this is when opinions formulate that kind of get you closer to what it's going to look like in the upcoming season. Very excited for that. Justin Jefferson has a press conference today at 11 o'clock that we will carry. And yours truly, Paul Allen, at the Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Happy to be back on the block being the Minnesota Vikings practice facility on your home for Minnesota Vikings football, FM 100.3 KFAN.
9 to noon.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. It is time for Vikes Bites. And Vikes Bites is brought to you daily, 9 to noon, brought to you by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. Go to thousandhillslifetimegrazed.com. Learn about agricultural, regenerative agriculture. Learn about elite product. You can shop online. You can also find Thousand Hills at your local Coburns, also local co-op locations. Thank you, Thousand Hills. I'm kicking off Vikes Bites PA. And it'll include a couple of topics that you briefly went over last segment as well. But I want to start with some audio from Brandon Powell. This is at the end of last week, just improving his game.
Oh, right now just trying to, get better, every day, just trying to, become a better receiver, become a better returner, just trying to find ways to get myself better to get ready for the season. Because once Jets come back, there's going to be a lot of plays out there to be made with him double covers, TJ double covers. So, just try to find a way I can get out on the field and help the team win.
Replacing KJ Osborne. Tremendous work over his tenure here in Minnesota, PA, but I hate to pinpoint or try to pinpoint a particular time in which things change, but final year kind of limped to the finish line for KJ. That concussion he suffered at Atlanta felt like he missed the next game, then he was back for the remainder of the season, but it just didn't click. Really the rest of the way. Now, Brandon Powell comes here from the Rams, punt return duties, all of that. But without KJ, it's the third wide receiver conversation. And you laid it out last segment as well. It's actually one of maybe several spots, not the sexiest talkers in the world, but certainly there is room and there is opportunity on this Vikings roster, and that includes the third wide receiver spot to complement Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Now, the Vikings in the offseason, they added Trent Sherfield, former Niner. More recently, I think maybe it was Buffalo last season. I forget specifically the path or the order of that. But Trent Sherfield, he's getting $1 million guaranteed, comes in. He does have a little veteran equity there. I wonder how much it matters that he's making $1 million guaranteed, those sorts of things. And then the intriguing part of N'Keal Harry, the former first-rounder, who really doesn't make it onto the field. I think I saw maybe just 3 or 4 offensive snaps last year for the Purple. But in the same sense, that big body that you talked about, 6'4", 220, somewhere in that area, and he doesn't go away. Now, I think it's new practice squad rules that some of these guys, you not just the kids on the practice squad anymore, N'Keal Harry and some of these guys able to stick with teams. Just kind of 10,000-foot view, Brandon Powell, the punt return value that he adds, certainly a feather in his cap, but the money that they invested in Trent Sherfield, still the continuing allure of a N'Keal Harry, second year hanging out in Minnesota, maybe a better grasp of the offense. I think this is, while, as I said, not one of the sexiest talkers, but one that is going to require some attention, not just in minicamp, but as we come back there in late July.
Yeah, it's important because in an offense that is a pass-first offense, and with one of the better pass-catching tight ends in T.J. Hawkinson on the mend, the 3 and 4 receiver sets, I don't know how in vogue they're going to be, but, I mean, we saw a fair amount last year, certainly 3 receivers. Now, with Brandon, I thought Brandon left more to be desired punt returning than I would have preferred. Now, it's not like we ain't talking about Dante Hall or Devin Hester back here, but, he dropped it at Philly, at a very inopportune time too, when Philly was starting to steamroll a little bit. But with Brandon, he's shifty and he's fast and to the kick return portion of the equation, I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings use 2 guys with this mystifying, weird kickoff thing that nobody seems to like. If they use 2 guys back there, Powell could be one with Wanwu. I'm going to talk about this later or maybe tomorrow, but I'm not exactly sure how well Kene Nwanwu fits with this new kickoff bit, but that's for a later segment or tomorrow. From a receiving standpoint, well, Jalen Naylor has to be in the mix because he's the fastest guy on the team, and I'm not saying he's going to make the team, but I'm not saying he's not. And Thayer Thomas is somebody who's just super, super tough. I really, really appreciated his work last year in training camp and the preseason games. Not the biggest thing in the world, but either was KJ Osborne. So with Sherfield Jr. and N'Keal Harry is when they signed Trent Sherfield Jr., I mean, Trent's career high for catches is like 25 or 30 or something like that. So, he's not a catch machine. And he's not a big, okay, well, look at that size, man. Let's use him in the red zone. He's not that either. So what is he? Well, he came into the league with Arizona, but he did some things with Arizona that helped their running game. Enough so that Next Level Shanny brought him to San Francisco. And if you are a receiver for the San Francisco 49ers, then you need to have a run-blocking, run-force quality to you, like Jawan Jennings. I mean, two of the best run-blocking wide receivers in the NFL are Jawan Jennings and Alan Lazard, who plays for the New York Jets. So with Harry, 6'4", 225, and Sherfield Jr., 6'1", 206-ish, those guys, if Harry can get it and mix it up in the run-blocking part of the equation, he'll make the team and he'll play. Same thing with Sherfield Jr. The guaranteed bid, whatever it is, $1 million, whatever. I mean that's not enough to not cut somebody if you don't want them around or you don't think they're good enough to play. But the point being is the running game is going to have some different to it this year. It may be between the tackles more than we're used to, but Aaron Jones Jr. can get outside too. Aaron Jones, that is. And Sherfield Jr. and N'Keal Harry, I mean, those are big-bodied wide receivers who can do some damage in the run force. And Sherfield Jr. is, from what I understand, knows how to do it quite well. He played for Buffalo last year, and they run a lot, and they run their quarterback. So I'm just kind of looking at the path Sherfield Jr. has taken. And the last three, he caught more passes with Miami than he did with San Francisco and Buffalo. But those are teams like the Dolphins had Raheem Mostert, and running was very important to them in 2022, and or whomever they used. And Sherfield, he was part of that. Likewise for Buffalo. So I think he's on the team to help the run force from a receiving standpoint.
Vikes Bites. Thank you, Thousand Hills. One more for you here, maybe before we pause.
We can do part two next segment.
Perfect. Blake Cashman. New to the mix, he replaces Jordan Hicks. Is there anything that you can think of that maybe Blake Cashman offers that might be an improvement over Jordan Hicks? And I love Jordan Hicks and his time here, but whether it's youth, it's some speed, it's some energy. Last segment talking about the green dot, he did some of that in Houston. I'm also curious, though, Ivan Pace wore the green dot during the preseason last year for the Purple.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know how much that builds into that conversation as well, but ultimately Cashman's here looking to start, looking to make plays. Is there anything you think about, and maybe it's as simple as the youth movement, that puts Blake in a spot to maybe upgrade that position?
It's a good question, but with the way Flores does things, you see, it's like if you laid them all out, and who's going to be favored to lead the team in tackles? I mean, I'd make Cashman prohibitively favored.
Yeah.
And especially, like when I was getting ready for Gessling, who's going to be here in 20 minutes, is he had a snippet somewhere, I can't remember where I saw it, where, he mentioned that Harrison Smith's playing time may diminish, nearing the end of his career. Well, I mean, Harry would be the second choice for me for leading tackler. So if he's going to play less, well, then that makes Cashman, compared to Hicks, that makes Cashman much better in the run defense than I think Jordan. Well, Jordan was pretty good at it, but this is kind of like what Blake does. He's just built differently. Now, Jordan's backpedal on the pass coverage was quite good. I'm not real familiar with how well Blake Cashman handles that or does not. But it's, it may What's going on, brother? It may seem trite or like it doesn't matter that much until, we get in there and we start hearing that things are going wrong. But the player that calls the defense has to be very sharp with the way they do it. Kendricks was very good at it. Jordan Hicks was very good at it. Ivan Pace Jr., he got an opportunity to do a little bit of it last year, I think, when Hicks went down. But Cashman, this if it's him, it's a big opportunity for him, because you, in essence, are the quarterback of the defense, and you're getting the call in, but it's not just a call. It has codes to it, with tentacles, depending on what the offense rolls up to the line with. So Blake is very smart, and Blake would be favored to do that, but I think run defense probably would be the answer compared to like Jordan Hicks.
Vikes Bites, thank you, Thousand Hills. And how about this? Let's pause, and then I got some few more to throw by next segment, PA.
Let's do it again. Byron Murphy audio, some Josh Oliver, and much more. 9 to noon is at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Day 1 for Minnesota Vikings minicamp. Yours truly on the scene. And much more on today, tomorrow, but more Vikes Bites around the corner. Vikes Bites Part 2 in a minute. Tomorrow from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. That's where yours truly will be. Fully expect to have a one-on-one interview with Justin Jefferson that yours truly hopefully will get the opportunity to do following minicamp practice today. And Alec Lewis joins tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Young Alec with The Athletic and theathletic.com. And Thursday, we open the show with Finch O. Chris Finch, beloved Chris Finch, or Finchy. He's going to have some extended time with 9 to noon to put a wrap on the 2023-2024 T-Wolves season. So Finchy, kind enough to come in studio and to join 9 to noon right out of the gate on Thursday. But now we got some more Vikes Bites.
Yeah, that's sweet, too. And not that Finch would care. You know how much I miss doing Howl Bites, PA? Howl Bites were fun. Thousand Hills loves the Howl, and Howl Bites were awesome. But back to Vikes Bites, as mandatory minicamp is underway at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Let me ask you this, and then I want to get to the cornerback situation. How does, in TJ Hawkinson, so there's a lot of, not ambiguity, but maybe mystery in terms of just when we can expect TJ to be back, and looking forward to him being healthy and on the field again. But until then, how does Josh Oliver's role expand, shrink, or change? He's a different type of player than TJ. You have Johnny Munt. You mentioned him in the open. Robert Tonyan. Remember that he had an unbelievable year with Rodgers in Green Bay. They're thinking this is the next great diamond in the rough that the Packers have found, and that Aaron Rodgers has utilized to a high level. Then I think he tore his ACL and really hasn't found a lot of traction since. As a matter of fact, he goes undrafted, picked up by the Lions. Then he goes to the Packers. Then he's with the Bears most recently. Now he's with the Vikings. He's completing a full NFC North tour, Robert Tonyan is. But specific to Josh Oliver, we know the story. A year ago this time, it's how can Josh Oliver really show that run-blocking prowess, and the run game still is something that the team is trying to improve. But how do you think Josh Oliver's role changes, expands, or shrinks in 2024?
I really don't. I mean, there could be a few more snaps or a few fewer snaps, but Josh is not, so with somebody down, he's just not the kind of guy that you go like every single snap of every game. He's a bigger guy. They get worn down, and he's not noteworthy for his pass catching. So extension to the offensive line, a little sneaky when they throw it to him. He catches better than I thought, but I don't expect a precipitous change. And
it's really then it's Johnny Munt and Robert Tonyan really becomes, that answer, the short-term stead, the answer to TJ Hawkinson, it sounds like. Vikes Bites, Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed. Byron Murphy entering his second season with the Minnesota Vikings. He's pumped about the energy that Brian Flores brings. He's pumped about some new faces in the cornerback room. Even talks about maybe getting some more reps at slot.
Obviously, the slot got a little bit more room, and then you're going to guard some, smaller, faster guys, twitchier guys. But, at the end of the day, you're a DB. You got to lock up, inside or outside.
So, given the situation at corner, we saw Byron Murphy playing a majority of his time really on the outside, but did some of his best damage on the defensive side of things over the course of his career playing on the inside. The addition of Shaq Griffin, you're expecting Mekhi Blackmon to make a jump year 1 to year 2, really hoping for that. Caleb Evans has a right to improve, etc. Liking the idea of Byron Murphy maybe getting into that inside role among the cornerbacks?
Yeah, I mean he did some damage inside earlier in his career, and Byron, he's not super thick. He's just scrappy. I mean, yeah. Byron's just not afraid. He makes mistakes. Like, he should have messed up the entire Carolina Panthers game, but Bryce Young was still so immature in his game that he couldn't close on something. But that happens. Yeah. And that happens, when that was early enough in the season where, like when I went through it earlier with the players, the majority of the players just not getting what Flores wanted through the first 3 games with Evans and Devontae Smith and players like that. Byron has position flexibility, and that's what Flores requires from a majority of his players. But that's not necessarily the case with the corners, where, Shaq Griffin's never going to play inside. A Caleb Evans, a Caleb inside and forcing the aggressiveness on him. In other words, if you're going to be touchy-feely and if you're going to be handsy and we're trying to pull something out of you, then you put them inside and they mix it up. You in training camp, this is what training camp's for. You put somebody in a spot they're not used to, and then you run at them, and you run at them again and again and again, and you see how they handle it. And if they can't handle the heat, then they don't keep the job. But with Byron, he can play outside or inside. Mekhi Blackmon is I think as an inside corner, and I'm not sure if he's going to get an opportunity, but he's just built like one, and we'll see what happens today.
Vikes Bites. One more for you here, and excited to hear from Ben Gessling in studio next at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, TCO Studios, though. Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth. At this stage, both entering the first 2 draft picks by Kwesi Adofo-Mensah in 2022, the injury to Lewis Cine, the up-and-down nature of Andrew Booth's, not only his play, but then just the opportunities and openings and chances for him to get on the field. I'm just curious, as you kind of frame up minicamp as the beginning of the plan, and then that layoff, a lot of time for coaches to change the plan into camp, I am curious how much leeway is left at this stage for them. It's not about their draft status or the investment in him at that stage, and at this point that probably isn't a factor. But Booth, 13% of defensive snaps, 151 a year ago, 121 of special teams. Lewis Cine, only active for 7 games last year and only played 8 snaps on defense, about half of the special team snaps that he was available for in 7 games. So I would actually say Lewis Cine, more productive and really was a factor on the special team side of things, just never on defense. Can they play and contribute? That's a question more for the coaches, of course, than you. But at this stage, it's got to be truly merit-based, right? You can't play the 32nd overall pick, second-round pick any longer for these guys. It's truly, can you play, can you contribute with Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth Jr.?
Yeah, I agree. Now, to take that, that piece of analysis and mesh it with Kyrie Jackson. Yeah, I mean, he was taken in the 4th round, so, I mean, it's not like we're talking about Thursday or Friday, but how will that factor into him? We drafted him. Well, they're going to keep him. He's going to make the team. I'd be shocked if he didn't. But in the land of 10,000 job openings with certain cornerback spots, he's a wild card. That's why in the opening segment I made him one of the wild cards. The only way to describe Booth Jr. and Cine is that of enigmatic. They are enigmatic players, and they both were drafted super high. Booth had some excuses out of the gate and hasn't overcome them, and Lewis Cine Jr. The Tottenham Hotspur situation I mean, if the young man had PTSD from what he looked down and saw, or like what happened to his professional life, and then it meshes with his personal life, if he had PTSD over that, I wouldn't be surprised. I can't say he does.
It was ugly.
But it was a traumatic situation. But I can't really say with Lewis that's what has derailed him, because he as a first round pick, he got derailed in training camp when he got beat by Cam Bynum for a safety spot, and that was a situation where I think many expected him to win it when they drafted him, but he didn't, and so therefore they're both enigmatic. Both could be cut, but like what starts today and then goes through Thursday. This is big for those guys. Just from what I understand, just showing the coaches that the steps, where to go. When Flores changes A not to B or C, he gets down to K or J. Well, you got to play that fast, and it has to go quick twitch. And if it doesn't go quick twitch, then you may be a goner. And neither one of those guys have put enough on tape to be like, okay, they're cinches to be picked up by another team, but then, they're what's going on, Ben? There always is room for somebody if they're gifted, like Cam Dantzler kept finding jobs there for a minute, and Cam can't play a lick, but very good question. And with the first day of minicamp today, another topic into which we will dive with the scribe, Ben Gessling, who joins 9 to noon from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center around the corner on KFAN.